Yes, it's on.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you. How's it going?
The comments you had to make.
Oh,
Before
yeah.
you came in.
Okay. All right, let's get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Thursday, August 22nd, public safety meeting. We're going to get started. I'll get started on behalf of the chair, Dorsey Clears. For the record, public safety members here, Councilmember Ballerin, Councilmember Igo, and myself, Councilmember Kimbrough. You're public safety?
Yes.
And Councilmember Tom Hoey. Tom Hoey. All right. Other council members here present: Councilmember Nani, Robinson, Johnson, Love, and our legislative aide, Michelle Andre. So we're here to. Oh, I'm sorry, President Pro Tem Richard Conte, whose legislation this is, and who will be running through the legislation with us once we get started here. I'd like to thank Chief Hawkins for his time, for being here with us. And we're here to discuss Resolution 547219R. And what we'll do is, I'm sitting here, Dorsey will be here in a minute. 10 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll have the sponsor kind of give us background on the proposed legislation.
Okay, thanks. So the issue is we're dealing with is the illegal use of ATVs and dirt bikes on public streets. I'm not going to get into the public safety concerns and issues because I think everybody's aware of that. It's an issue that's not just an Albany problem, as I think people know. It's a regional problem. Other cities are dealing with this issue. It's a problem around the country, and it's a difficult one for law enforcement to really address because the nature of the vehicles, and especially in urban areas where you want to avoid high-speed chases, etc. So what my proposal is not meant to be a solution, but is meant to be another option or a tool that might be helpful from a law enforcement perspective in trying to address the issue. And what it does, there's a section of state law under the general municipal law, and if you have a copy of the resolution with the sponsor memo, on the sponsor memo under existing law does have the text of the state law, section 91 of the general municipal law. Basically, that authorizes a city or a local government through its local legislative body or council to establish or authorize a rewards program for information that might lead to the arrest and conviction of someone engaged in that activity, and offers a reward, or would authorize an award of up to $1,000 for a misdemeanor or up to $25,000 for a felony. In order for that section to be implemented locally, the council has to authorize it, and that's the purpose of the resolution. I will note that in prior years, the council has authorized this provision of law as it relates to illegal drug use and sales, and also with regard to the use of guns. So it's not something that has been in prior councils has authorized for certain areas. The resolution, and I want to also deal, in terms of, even though we talk about felonies, the use of dirt bikes and ATVs on public streets, which are unlicensed vehicles, that really falls into the misdemeanor category. So we're really not talking about felonies unless an accident occurs where you're actually physically harming someone, or even if it's loss of life or something like that. But basically what we're dealing with is a vehicle and traffic law violation related to the use of an unlicensed vehicle on public streets, which I think equates to a misdemeanor. So that's what we're dealing with. And the chief can talk about some of the ways that the department is right now trying to deal with the situation. Also, I think in communications or discussions, because it's not just an Albany problem, but I know that you had discussions with other departments locally because other cities are dealing with this as well. So the resolution itself is the authorization under that section of the general municipal laws, an authorization to the chief of police to establish a program within the parameters of what the general municipal law allows, and then to basically provide that to the council. Other cities have used this. Washington, D.C. is one that comes up a lot. Does have a similar program where they offer a reward of up to $250. The program that we do does not have to be up to $1,000 or $25,000. That's the discretion of the chief in terms of how he would like to approach that. But as I say, it's just it's another tool. That's what it's meant to be, to try to get information that might be useful in terms of dealing with this situation. And it's an authorization to the chief to develop a program. I think that is really basically a summary of what it does. I can answer questions, or maybe you want to hear what the department's doing.
Right, so just real quick, there will be public comment during the meeting. First, we'll hear from the chief, and then...
I don't know if Tom had a quick question on this. Or...
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Richard, you had mentioned that driving an unregistered vehicle, and it's probably a misdemeanor, but more serious than not having it registered is driving around without insurance. And my insurance lapsed once, and I couldn't, it's up to a year in jail, and it's like $1,000 a day, if I remember correctly, for driving a vehicle that's not.
Yeah, I don't even know if they would get insurance, and that's the different issue, because it's not unregistered, but they're not vehicles that can be licensed, so they're not subject to being licensed for use on public streets. So they are basically unlicensed vehicles that are not meant for use on public streets, and that's part of the issue. So I don't even know if they can get insurance.
Because you can register a dirt bike.
You can, yeah. But you can't get, if you're using it on a public street, which is illegal, I don't know that your insurance would cover anything that...
You get insurance on bike. The ATV is kind of a, there might be insurance available.
There might be insurance, but what I'm just saying is, would the insurance cover something if it happened related to an illegal use on a public street where it's not allowed?
Right, in New York State, you can't, the four-wheeler, you can't register and get a plate for street use.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the two-wheeler bike.
Yeah, some dirt bikes.
Correct. They have the turn signal stuff. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we'll hear from the chief.
All right, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rich. And so just want to first start off by saying that, just like Rich said, I see this as being just a part of efforts in order to address this issue. It's an issue that we're seeing across the capital region. I have detectives who meet regularly with detectives from Schenectady and Troy, and they're sharing information, because what we're seeing and what the intelligence is telling us is that these riders are going through all of the cities in the capital region, and so we're seeing the same ones, and so we're sharing information to see if there's some links between some of the things that we're seeing. So we're already doing that piece of it. We've already asked the public, at the very outset, at the very start of the summer, we were asking the public to help us to identify who these individuals on these bikes are. Because a lot of times, sometimes they have masks that are, covering their faces. Sometimes they have helmets. Sometimes they don't have any of those things, but we just can't identify who they are. And if we can get the public's help to give us an idea of who they are, it can help us to track down some of these folks. And a lot of times it's not all punitive. Sometimes it's just a matter of tracking some of these folks down to let them know that these activities are not permissible on our roads, and to give them some advice on where they can go and where they can legally operate these things. So we've been asking for the public's help all summer anyway. And in terms of tactics, some of the things that we've been using are unmarked cars and with plainclothes officers. We've had some limited success with that. We've impounded, well over a half dozen of these unlicensed vehicles. We've issued citations to several individuals who are riding those vehicles. So we've had some limited success with that. And the reason we want to do that is because, just like Mr. Conti said, I don't want my officers chasing these vehicles through our city streets. It's just going to add to the instability of our roads. It's it's already dangerous what they're doing, and I don't want to add to the danger to our roads and endanger our folks even more. So I've instructed our officers we're not to get involved in high-speed pursuits through our neighborhoods with these vehicles. So unmarked cars with plainclothes vehicles. We've talked with the state police to see if we can use some of their aircraft whenever we get some information and intelligence that these vehicles are in a certain area, or that they may be being kept in a certain area, to give us an aerial view of where they may be storing these vehicles, or if we know that they're going to be in a certain area, if our intelligence is telling us that on a certain day and time they're going to be in a certain area at 4 or 5 p.m., and we can get some either fixed aircraft or one of their helicopters to help us to follow at a distance to see where they're going. That's a tool, so that we don't have to actually get out there and chase these riders through our city. We're going to soon have drones. We're in the final stages of acquiring our drones. Within the next 2 to 3 weeks or so, we'll have those. Drones are, only gives us limited capabilities because they only have a short flight time. They can only fly for 25 or 30 minutes at a time. And then they can only go so fast. And as you guys know, when we see these riders in our city, they're going from place to place at a fairly high clip. So there will be limited application for drones, but they may be able to help us out as well. And then we're also engaging in some intelligence that I can't disclose publicly to identify who the individuals are, where these vehicles are being stored. And we're very, very optimistic. In fact, we've had some very, very good success in identifying some of these folks and identifying where these vehicles are being stored that have allowed us to actually go and impound or cite some of the individuals who are doing this. So to me, I see this as an educational thing. Like I said, it's not all punitive. These aren't all bad people who are doing this, but they're doing bad things. And the behavior is bad in the sense that it's endangering people in our community. And so we got to get that word out, through education, through, if we can find out who they are, letting them know what some options are in terms of doing this, and if necessary, citations and impounding the vehicles. And so when we're talking about the reward system that Mr. Conti is introducing, I support it in the sense that it's really just a continuation of some things that we've already been doing. We've already been asking for help from the community. We already have Crime Stoppers, so if they want to use that, that's one avenue that they can use. But I see this as another tool to kind of give some incentive to people in our community to come forward and share some information with us that can help us to identify the folks who are using these vehicles. Thank you.
Just to bring it up to speed, Mr. Conti spoke as a sponsor, then we had the chief give us a brief comment, and now we're open to members. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Member Kimbrough, for your assistance in getting us started. Thank you, Chief, for being here. And thank you, Councilman Conti, for introducing the legislation and providing an overview. I'm going to open it up for questions, comments from council members, and after that, we will allow the public the opportunity to provide comment if you so choose to. So with that said, I'm going to open it up to colleagues who are members of the Public Safety Committee. I'll start to my left. Councilman Igo, do you have any questions or comments?
First of all, I'd like to say that they scared the hell out of me. I was waiting at the point on Washington and Central, in 2 lanes here. A quad came right between us, and got to the intersection of Lark and whatever you want to call it there, Washington, took a right-hand turn up onto the sidewalk. And the bus had just let people off, and I said, oh my God, what am I going to see when I come up there? Another night, DJ and I were coming out of City Hall. Remember that night? And we're talking out, and I said, what the hell is that? I thought the helmet guys were back in town for, it was really. And they are all over, and I'm real concerned, Yeah. But you mentioned something about options that they might have. Can you say, we're looking for a piece of land, I don't know anything that could be available, but what options are you referring to?
And the only option that we would be able to offer would be for them to do some research, their own research, to find out where there are places, obviously outside of Albany, because we don't have any place within Albany. But are there some places outside the city of Albany where they can actually use those ATVs legally and without endangering the public? So pretty much that's what we will be
There
doing.
are, there used to be, out in Skodak, guys used to race them up the hills and this and that, whatever. But then again, you need a trailer or something to get them out there, which is, very difficult if you don't have a license to hunt.
Yes.
You need 2 vehicles now. That's,
Thank you. Councilman Ballard?
I've got 2 questions. One is piggyback on the question about options. Do we know of options that we can give them? Because I stopped a group of young men that they were inviting, so I didn't chase them down. They were on the side of the block, and I pulled over as I was driving. And I spoke to them, and I let them know, what you're doing is illegal. 2, you're not wearing helmets. Most guys were not wearing helmets. You're putting your own life at risk. And 3, if there was an option, would you use it if we told you about it? And would you be able to get to it? And the answer I got back from this small group, and it's not, was that they would use the options, and that they do have a pickup truck that they'd be able to pick up and go. So my first question is it possible for us to publish the options so that people know this is where you can go if you want to do this safely, and also let people know what you need to be, if you want to do this safely, what equipment you need, because we don't want anyone to have. Motorcycles are great and a lot of fun, but even with a helmet, if you get into an accident, you can have a serious brain damage. So is it possible for us to publish that as part of our information education of our public about what resources are out there, what's the proper way to ride these vehicles, and get that information out to people, because we want the nuisance to stop, but we also want these guys to be safe. I mean, the group that I stopped was between 17 and 32. That's young, and I wouldn't want to see someone have brain damage, in general. So is that something that we can do as part of our education process, as part of our informing the community about how to do this right and how to do it safely without being a nuisance to neighbors? Because it's a nuisance all over. It's a nuisance all over. I get calls. I hear it down my block all the time, and it's at all hours. And it's hard for anyone that has little ones in the neighborhood when he's zipping by at 1, 2 in the morning. But I also want to see how we can help educate so they don't get themselves injured, as well as do it in a safe way. So that was one question that I wanted.
Let me just answer that one for you real
Thank
quick.
you.
And so, Councilman, I would caution against that, because I can see that exposing the city by us telling or publishing to them and recommending where they should go to ride these vehicles. And if by chance something were to happen, if there were to be some sort of accident or anything else, and it turns out that this was a place that was recommended by the police department or by the city, I can see that being some exposure to the city. And so I would be more comfortable letting them know that there are options, and it may be even pointing them toward where they can find the options. If there's some database that shows where all of the places where they can legally ride these vehicles are. But I wouldn't be comfortable with actually telling them or recommending to them a specific place to go, even if we knew where that place was. I'd be more comfortable with them finding that out on their own, through their own research.
What about the safety tips?
Safety tips are good, yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with the safety tips, yes.
'Cause some of these guys were young, and you know, young people do stupid things, and I'm not justifying the stupid things they do, but I don't want them to have lifetime consequences for it. My other question was, how has the information sharing with the public gone? Have you gotten a lot of information already from the public, a lot of tips about where these occurrences are happening?
Not a lot.
No.
And we've gotten this information out. We've done a number of public things, you know, with my public information officer, but occasionally they come in, but I wouldn't say that we're getting a whole lot of tips from the public at this point.
Did you get many tips on guns and, well, you weren't here at the time, but recently, on drugs and guns that we already had a reward program for?
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, that program was done a long time ago, and I think
Yeah.
maybe Crime Stoppers may have supplanted that to some extent, so.
I didn't know if it was still.
Thank you.
Thank you.
sorry.
Councilman,
But to Iko's question, we do have a system already in place that awards the public if they give an information to law enforcement, right?
Yes, we have Crime Stoppers in place for, yes.
Councilman Kimbrell.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, you're welcome.
So have any of these tips gone into Crime Stoppers? Have they forwarded tips to the police department?
I have to check, because I'm not sure if if those tips have come through Crime Stoppers or not, so I can check and I can give you feedback on that.
Okay. And another, as a person that wore that uniform and spent a little bit of time chasing people around the city, I do support the program. I see it as another tool. I know it feels weird, we're all saying tool, just another tool that we can use to help combat this. But my fear with some of this is we're talking about providing a place for folks to go to ride and do this. Some of the riders, and some of whom I know, the thrill comes from being out in the street. The thrill comes from the chase. It comes from being a part of that. So I don't know, what percentage of in the group that would work for. So I do support this. Again, I see it as a tool. Us authorizing this legislation allows you to create, a program or something. So I'm all for that.
Thank you.
Councilman Wu.
Yes, Chief, Councilman Fredo had brought up one of my points that you can get hurt and you can get paralyzed, brain damage. I Googled when we first started looking at this, I actually Googled the number, what happens when people are on bikes and stuff. And across the country, there's an awful lot of young people being hospitalized because of this. So I guess my one comment, I'm supportive of this legislation, but I was wondering, I always believe in education, that we need to educate people what can happen. Is there any way we could work with the school system also to come up with maybe YouTube videos or whatever showing what can happen when you do, this type of behavior is taking place, or even having, it's something that needs to be taught. When I took driver's ed, they scared the heck out of us by showing us accidents and stuff. And it really, as a young person, that did impact me and made me slow down a little from seeing it. So if there's some way we could reach out to these kids and show them that this is what could happen. I believe in education, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll segue to our general members. Before doing so, I'm listening to the conversation, and for those of us who grew up in inner cities, this is a part of the culture. Summer, it gets warm, cookouts, kids outside, and people riding dirt bikes. It is a part of the culture, and so I guess as I'm hearing, and I know it's a concern, I know there's safety concerns for the people riding the bikes, but also for the people, the pedestrians who have to engage with those riding the bikes. This has been allowed to go on for so long. This has been just entrenched in what happens when it gets warm outside. And I live not too far from 2nd Avenue, and it is a drag race for cars, but also popping wheelies on bikes. So is this a hard stop where immediately, you know, I know you're proposing a rewards program, but do people know that what they're doing is wrong? Because they've been allowed to do it for so long without too many people, including law enforcement, intervening or interfering. And so I know we talk about education and putting things up on websites, but I'm curious as to how many people who are actually the target audience that we're speaking of will be checking for the city's website, to be checking for tips, to be checking for what to do. I'm all for it, but is it realistic in terms of reaching those who we are trying to reach? So I want to make sure we're having, putting out strategies that will actually be beneficial to the people that we're talking about. That being said, I will, Councilwoman Love,
Thank
turn
you.
it over.
I want to go back to one of Kelly's questions about the thrill.
Yes.
It's the thrill of them riding their ATVs in the street. Because a couple of weeks ago, I was out walking, and I was with a couple of friends, and one of the kids, and I say kids because like there's 17 up to maybe 30 something, and he went up and he almost fell off. And a friend of mine asked him, did he have any health insurance? And he said no, but he got back up. So that's a big concern about us, because someone's going to foot that bill at some point. You know what I'm saying? But one thing I want to ask you is the cost of these drones that's going up. What's the cost for these drones that's going to go up? And how many are we getting?
We're going to get 2, and if I'm not mistaken, the total cost is somewhere around, it's just shy of $40,000, I think, for the 2 of them. And so one...
A piece or 2?
For 2, for both.
Okay.
For both, total cost, I believe it's just shy of $40,000. And so the one will be for outside use, and the other will be for internal use.
Okay, and last question, I'm sorry. And the drones will only be used for this purpose only?
No, the drones will have many applications. They're going to have applications, tactical applications. If our tactical officers are out at a scene, and we need to get a visual of a place where it won't be safe to have officers there, we can use it for that. Search and rescue. We used, I think it was about a month and a half ago, we used a drone from the Sheriff's Department to help us to locate a missing child that was in some wooded area. Traffic reconstruction during major accidents, to give us an aerial view of these accidents, to see how traffic is flowing in and out of that area, so that if we have to divert traffic in a certain area from these accidents and things like that. So they have, and then for something like this potentially as well. So the drones have many applications. The interior drone, if we have for example, a hostage situation, and it's just not, safe to have an officer or officers going inside. If we can covertly get some kind of interior view of that place, because the one for inside would be much smaller and made for getting into some of these crevices and covertly doing that. It can give us some eyes inside of the place to kind of help us if we have to make some sort of entry. So they'll have many, many applications.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And
Councilman Johnson?
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
We've had many conversations about this topic.
Yes.
And one of the things that I was thinking about is a dedicated space. Being that they're riding on the street, why couldn't we have them in a particular area at a set time? And, you talked before about liability. When I go to Washington Park and I'm watching the guys play basketball, they have that skateboard park over there. And it's a lot of liability that is, I'm assuming that the city is liable for people over in that park. And we figured out make it work. So,
I think there's a disclaimer there for people who use the skateboard park, that the city's not liable. And that's typical of skateboard parks and municipalities. They post something like that, so that even though it might be
why
municipal.
we didn't take the same approach, like when we have had alternative suggestions in earlier conversations, which you hear clearly is that the city doesn't want to be liable. So if we can have, and I'm just saying, if we are trying to have a realistic approach, because I'll say this, since we've been talking, I see less and less of the guys riding through. So, the things, that you have been doing thus far has had an effect, and even in the communication with the people that I know that ride, they're aware of, people are paying attention to them. Mm-hmm. And, most people that recognize that people are paying attention to them, they either do something about it, and you're going to have people that just don't care. And I think that from what I see, this is an issue that we only deal with for a certain part of our year because of the temperature. People don't ride bikes year round. So, my reluctance for this approach is because it's putting citizen against citizen. And, most of the riders are minority people. And most of the people, because a lot of people, as Councilwoman said earlier, it's the culture. Like on the 4th of July, we expect to hear fireworks. Do we like it? Nope. But it doesn't bother us to the point where, we complain about it as others may. So you kind of get the feeling, that it comes with the territory. Now, it's dangerous. It's like, super dangerous, and it's against the law. So how do we have that conversation with a group and establish an understanding they're going to respect, and expecting them to go out to Wineskill? I know personally that, some of those guys don't have that opportunity to put their bike on a truck and make it out there. So, coming up with a solution that would be a solution, people want to ride. And, parents buy kids bikes, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, as people ride in those little motorized bikes. So some people just never get out of that. And how do we effectively communicate with them and not put them, like a bounty over their head? Because there's some people, unfortunately, they're going to be in their cars chasing after those cars. And, at the end of the day, I just don't see it being 100% all good. And I would have reservations about supporting this effort. And I love, the other things that you were talking about, because I hear about it. They see the detectives in the unmarked cars watching them, so I think that we've sent a message loud and clear that it won't be tolerated, and I think that with follow through, the knuckleheads will get the message. But I just don't want to see people going after each other.
Just to respond, and thank you, Councilman, and just to clear up, I'm not fundamentally opposed to having some place, for these riders to go. I just think that that's, it's the city's decision, with the city, with the Corp Council to decide what type of appetite the city has for certain types of liability for. But, if that's what the city decides, I'm not opposed to that. And I agree with you and with the chair that education with this is critical. So if something like this were to happen, I think a critical piece of this and a very, very important part of it is we have to get the educational piece out. Like I said in my opening comments, we've met. If somebody here was with me when we met with some of the riders, a rider or two at a meeting where they just wanted to talk to us and get some advice. And I can't remember who was. It wasn't okay.
I know. You and I had talked. I went to ask them would they talk to you, and they said yeah.
Okay, so it was a referral from you then.
Yes.
well, we met with them. And, I mean, you know, these aren't bad people.
Right.
You know, I mean, they're out there, they're doing some things, but they're engaging in some behaviors that are endangering the community, obviously. And so we've got to address it. So it's not about being punitive, it's about, I think we need to educate, and we need to, and if necessary, then we need to take the appropriate enforcement action. But I'm not fundamentally opposed to having a place as long as the city has an appetite for it, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman.
Yeah, thanks, Chief, for being here. And I just want to echo my colleague, Councilman Johnson, and the approach that you have been taking so far with the unmarked vehicles and, you know, gathering intelligence. I live in one of the communities probably impacted the most by ATV usage, and I've seen a decrease in it in my neighborhood. And so, and you know, you're taking further efforts to mitigate the issue by the use of drones. So you are taking proactive approaches to stopping this issue. I have a question. Where are the hot spots? Where your office finding where the hot spots in the city are, where most of this activity is occurring?
We get them pretty much all over, but I think where we get the most complaints is in that Lark and Madison area. We get a lot there. We get a lot downtown. We get a lot of complaints in West Hill area, Arbor Hill. Some of if I had to give 3 or 4, I would say those who were getting most of the complaints.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and some of these communities are predominantly minority communities of color, predominantly, like West Hill, Arbor Hill,
Okay.
what you call it. And so while my concern is that, you know, creating a reward program is a slippery slope. I think the use of bikes are not illegal. I mean, dirt bikes are not illegal. It's just the use of them are illegal. And so my thing is, if someone is calling to give a tip to someone about a possible bike in someone's yard, that can promote an interaction with law enforcement that's not needed. And
Go ahead. Go ahead and finish, and I'll respond.
yeah, I think that can provide an interaction with law enforcement that's not necessarily needed. And like over the summer, fireworks was an issue for us, and auto was an issue for us. So my thing is, well, the next step for us would be to create a rewards program for people who are using fireworks. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
This is a non-violent offense. So I think that's my reservations with this piece of legislation.
Okay. And the only thing I wanted just to respond to is just about the police tactics and strategies to dealing with this if we are to receive a tip. And the strategy, the primary strategy would be if we received information that one of these ATVs or four-wheelers or wherever were at a certain location, would be to watch that location to find out if in fact that person is using that vehicle on the roadway in an illegal way. And if they were, then we'd have some sort of interaction at that point, whether it be when they stopped it or when they parked it at that point. But so there would be some sort of interaction at some point, but the strategy is to have this interaction in a way where it won't escalate into some sort of violent confrontation between officers and the people who are riding these either, because our officers understand, just like you said, it is a nonviolent offense, you know, so we're not getting into this to have some sort of physical altercation or anything like that with the folks who are riding it. And if it gets to a point where they believe that it may escalate to something like that, then they're being taught and directed to disengage and to find some other way of addressing the issue. So I'm not terribly concerned about, you know, some negative interactions in that respect. But you're right. If they do find out where they are, then it gives us another tool to either engage in some educational component to it, to let the folks know that, you know, hey, riding these things on the roadway are illegal, it's unsafe. Here's some potential outlets that you can research to figure out where some places where you can go to do this safely. And again, as a last resort, then we can issue citations or impound the vehicle.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so my thing is, I know that you've taught your officers, you're teaching your officers strategies regarding police interactions, but there is still a distrust within some of these communities with law enforcement. So sometimes those strategies, when there's a trust barrier there, those strategies don't work. And so I think, I agree with Councilman Johnson is, finding a safe area for these riders to go to is an approach, but I would want to take the less punitive method in addressing this issue. So.
Okay.
Oh, and also, maybe to engage the council members more about where they're seeing some of the hot spots in their area, and that may can be also a tool.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Councilman Anani?
Yeah, thank you. First off, my position on this piece of legislation is no secret. I do support it. The Chief, you were talking about other municipalities that you're working with. My question is, do other municipalities have this type of program in place?
No,
They
not
don't?
that I know of, no.
Gotcha. And because it seemed like this is more of a regional type of problem. You see people riding down Central Ave, going into Colony, or going towards Guilderland. So hopefully if this legislation passes, I look forward to maybe encouraging other municipalities to have a similar piece of legislation. I believe wholeheartedly that the role of government is to protect its citizens. And when you see this type of behavior that is taking place with individuals on ATVs, it's unacceptable. Just the other day, I heard a resident being hit with an ATV on Log Street. A police officer also being hit with an ATV. These type of illegal activities, we have to send a message, right? Because again, if we're not enforcing these type of illegal activities, we're opening a can of worms for other type of activities to occur. And I keep hearing people making comparisons to ATVs and skateboards. When you hear incidents that deals with ATVs, it's usually harm to the individual who's riding, not typically done to the public. And most of the ATVs that are being rode around the city is usually injuries to the public, not the actual person who's riding the ATVs. So, I also, one of the things I appreciate about this city, I love this city, I care about this city, I want to see the city grow. And when you hear incidents of reports of individuals riding ATVs on sidewalks, it's sending a wrong message if law enforcement don't have the tools to eradicate this problem. So again, Kelly said, this is just another tool for law enforcement to do their job. We're in the 21st century. I support law enforcement using all different type of technology to eradicate this type of behavior or just crime moving forward. So I support this and I'll be voting for it if it comes to the full council.
Thank you. Councilman Anani? Any other comments?
Just one comment. They are throughout the city. They're going all the way up Whitehall Road to New Scotland. I don't know if they're going out left, but that'd be an ideal spot for them because there are woods out past the golf course, and I'm afraid the golf course can, rode over by these all-terrains. They could do a lot of damage. But Derek, you know what? They are in it for the thrill, okay? And the thrill never leaves them. Where I live near Route 85, when you get off on Crumpka Road, you get around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you hear the bikes going like years ago used to be the cars on the drag strips. These bikes are all out on the highway, and there's not much up that way. And I know we don't have a whole lot of traffic now either, but but they are all over, and it's kind of scary when you see them dirt bikes because it's not as stable as a good chopper or something. You know what I mean? But they're there, especially on weekends.
So I can talk about my own experience with dirt bikes, which happened up on Central Avenue across from Hannaford Plaza. As I was going up that way, I heard them coming up, so this noise, and I looked and they were coming up around me. One went to my left into the turn lane, another went around and up on the sidewalk where there's also a bus shelter there and went up around the sidewalk. And I think there was someone at that shelter also. So that's this, and then it just swerved around and went forward on. Some of the, the videos that are viral, a lot of them are, that you've seen locally, are around the Lark Street, Madison, Central, Dove Street area.
The guys with the
They also-
GoPro on them right
They
on.
also include,
Crazy.
they're actually where, some of them are videos that people have taken, some of them are ones where the riders themselves have filmed it as a.
The one on YouTube, the
thrill.
guy had a GoPro, and
But-
he watched all the guys go in front of him, and there was a cop van at Lark and whatever, and, he did the same thing. He was parked there, and they were just...
It does include sometimes going up on sidewalks as well.
How long ago were those videos taken?
Very recent. These are recent, because I don't know how long, it's been an issue for, but it must have spiked recently, because it's not an issue that I've, or have heard about a lot in the neighborhood until recently, the past few months. So those are really pretty recent, fairly recent. Within the
When I
past
started
few
seeing
months
them
or
was
so.
after this piece of legislation was introduced, actually.
Mhm.
So in
So,
the last couple months. But
the other
then
part,
it was the
again-
weather, so.
We're going back again to this, again, it's a tool, it's not meant to preclude
Yeah.
any other options that might be out there. So it's just another method to try to get some information that might be helpful. It's not meant to preclude any other option or approach that can be employed as well. So, and also, to some extent, it could be an educational tool, because it has, recently focused a lot of attention on this issue. So it could be used as an educational tool to some extent as well. But I think we're dealing with a serious, the public safety issue, where you have potential for physical harm. And we're, just trying to look at what kind of tools are out there, not to preclude other options, but just to try to deal with this issue in some way.
Thank you, Councilman Vallerin, and then we'll go back this way.
You mentioned one of your actions after you're informed of a potential vehicle being used is to, and I'm not sure, maybe I misheard you, is to give them information about the law and, safety. If that's an action, that's actually, to me, a great action, because it deals with the behavior. That's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change the behavior of these individuals, of what they're doing, of the risks they're putting to the public, but the risks they're doing to themselves as well. Because when I stopped the group, one of the guys was someone I knew from the YMCA. I don't want to see these guys get hurt. I don't want to see these guys get arrested either, but I don't want to see them get hurt. So I like that option, if that's one of the options that the police department decides to take, is to knock at their door and say, hey, here's the information, here's the safety tips, here's the law, and we're going to be looking at you. To stop the action. The goal for me is to stop the behavior and not get these young people, or get these, not any of these, young, old, not get them in a bad situation, and also not get them in a situation where they can hurt themselves or anybody else. So I like that as if that's one of your options for us to look at.
Is that an option, Chief? Because from your remarks, I didn't hear that if someone tipped off the department that there was a bike in someone's, on their property, that you all would intervene and provide education. I heard that you all would intervene by watching, observing, and then in the event the person got on the bike, there would be some level of encounter once the bike stopped. Is that accurate, that you all would intervene once the person was using the bike, or to what?
I thought I heard something that said that they'd be given an information package. Maybe I heard wrong.
I think it is.
I
Also, if you
apologize.
stop them in the public, right, you will try to give them some information, but if a member of the public gives you information about where their storage is, you're actually going to watch them and then follow suit if there's any incidents happen.
So it could be a couple of different things. It could be because the officers have discretion, and I've given them discretion on how to deal with this at the very outset. So it could be, once they find these individuals on these vehicles, they have the discretion of issuing warnings. and to give them information about, what's the proper way to ride these, what the law is regarding those safety tips and things like that. So they've always had that discretion. But I think our strategy up to now has been to take more enforcement action and less warnings, simply because of the complaints and the outcry that we've been getting from members of the community about how unacceptable it is, and from what we've seen, how dangerous some of these things are. So most of our actions right now have been enforcement actions, either citations or the impounding of the vehicles. However, I like the approach of implementing and having the educational component being more of a tool for us as we move forward. And so my direction with my officers going forward is to they have discretion. If they see some of these acts out there and they decide that an impounding of the vehicle or a citation is appropriate, then they still retain that discretion. However, I'm going to give direction and to give some advice and encouragement to my officers that enforcement and citations are not always the best course, and that there are some other things that we can do in order to gain compliance, such as what the councilman here is suggesting. Giving some safety tips and other advice on how to avoid being in that situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Howard?
Yeah, so fast, that brings up a point. How would you treat somebody who's like 15 or 16 as opposed to somebody who's 21 or older? Would you treat them differently? In my mind, the education should be on the younger, especially. But, I'm just wondering, will you take that into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. And usually when that happens, we're getting in touch with parents and advising parents right away about what happened, finding out who owns the vehicle that this 14 or 15-year-old is riding and why is that vehicle in that person's possession. So in most cases with the younger folks, it is more of an educational component to it.
Councilman Ho, can I just say that, because I think there's a race component here, and I don't always want to make things about black and white, but again, race seems to always be on the table. But what we do know is that when it comes to black and Hispanic boys, they tend to be viewed older, hence the track record we have with incarcerating younger black and brown boys in adult prison. So to the point, I just want to put that on the table that ideally, if someone was 15, the approach would be to the strategy would be education, but we do know from evidence that black and brown boys tend to be treated as adult men.
They shouldn't be.
So I just wanted to say that, and who we're talking about here, it sounds like predominantly would be young men of color engaging with our officers.
Yes.
Darth?
Just a quick question too. Is there any study
So
that,
we'll go after you. So, okay, go ahead, sorry.
as it relates to the perpetrators of these activities, do you have any data as it relates to demographics? Because
I don't have any, but I'm sure from the ones that we've issued citations to and from the vehicles that I don't know. I mean, anecdotally, I could probably say what they are, but I don't. If you want a definitive answer about what it is, the data is there, and it's just a matter of just taking it out and finding out what's the demographics of those who have been issued citations or had the vehicles impounded.
yeah, if you could share that with the council, that would be great. Yeah, I just want to say too that I am open to trying to find a location as relates to maybe the landfill if it do close one day. But also, I just
They got so many bills out there now.
They would create a public health issue for the rider. Okay.
some type of
Hill climbing.
I'm just coming up with some
Not
ideas, some suggestions.
But I will
do waste of energy, we can make it work. But anyway, your last comment as it relates to the discretion of the police officers. I do want to be clear. If an individual is riding an ATV on a sidewalk, going the wrong direction, it's not a time to educate the perpetrator. I think some type of action needs to be taken. That is unacceptable, especially when businesses is a nuisance to the businesses, is a nuisance to the public. Some of these business individuals are taking video, they're sharing it. It sheds a bad light on the city of Albany. And I believe that this is a step in the right direction. And as much as we want to give the law enforcement discretion, I do want to send a message that if they see an individual on the sidewalk, going the wrong way, or even just on the sidewalk, there shouldn't be any discretion. I think a message needs to be sent at that moment, because the public, it's a nuisance, one, but also for the public's safety. So that's my concern. I'd like to echo that to the officers.
Indeed.
Thank you. So we have Councilman Igo, Councilman Kimbrough, and then Councilman Robinson. And Councilman Johnson, do you have?
I've been, trying, I did have something else to offer, and I had to go to another meeting.
Okay, and then we'll conclude with Councilman Johnson, and then we'll open up for the public we have one.
How many minutes?
One.
Okay.
All right, Councilman Igo.
My concern is, the biggest fear I have is that some young kid, 8 years old, coming out of a shop or something, or on that bus stop or whatever, and they get killed. And then this whole thing's gonna change, the whole story, and the outlook in the city, and you know it will. I mean, and I don't wanna wait till that happens. I don't know. And you mentioned you saw a 32-year-old riding this bike. Well, a 32-year-old he's driving with a license, you would think, you would hope. So you would give him a citation, and what would it be? To go to traffic court? Or?
In most cases,
They do?
yes.
And these others that, the young, they probably don't, maybe they have a license, maybe they don't. Okay? So then what? You get a citation. You can't go to traffic court if you don't have a license. I don't know how it works, you know what I mean? And then again, it's educate the young, but some of these people are just in it for the thrills, and I don't know. I just, I pray that it never happens.
Thank you. Councilman Kimbrough.
Yeah, so the way I envision this, whether the tip comes in the Crime Stoppers or some other entity that you create, we get the tip, police department finds out where a bike is or whatever, bike or four-wheeler. Not that you go storming into the house or go, there and cause a confrontation. I would like to think that you take the investigative steps and go through a process. But I would also add that I'd like to see, you have certain, not that you get to pick who comes to arrest you or deal with when it comes to officers, but there's some officers that are known and loved by this community, or these communities that we're talking about. Maybe those could be the officers that you send out to engage folks with a task force, for lack of a better word, to just go say knock it off.
Kelly, you shouldn't have left the force.
To go and deal with them in a manner that I think would be acceptable to probably everyone at the table.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman.
So I just wanted to say,
Johnson.
as far as education, I know we jump. As far as education, right, if you know how to pop a bully on a motorcycle, you have experience in falling off that motorcycle. Most of those people who are riders have had, the luxury of bad experience. That's been their education. So, when I talked about alternatives, because when I talked to them and I suggested an alternative, they were open for it. So a lot of people ride on the street because there's no other place for them to ride. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the spirit behind suggesting a dedicated space for them, because most of the times if people have the chance to do something, they're going to do it the right way. And it's not no 100% fix for this, because it's coming from many different angles. But that's the reason why I made reference to the skateboarding, because it was people that had concerns about skateboarding, and the city at that time figured it out, and you go up there and it works, and you don't. I'm pretty sure people get hurt up there, but you don't hear about it as much. And I would hate to hear of anyone getting hit by ATV, whether it be a 3-year-old or an 80-year-old. It's going to be negative. It's not going to be good. So I think that you have sent a stern message out to the community, and they responded to it. So,
Thanks.
Last but certainly not least.
You know. I know that we keep throwing around the world that word that this is a tool, this is a tool. I think, this is a tool that really has no type of, precedent, because this is going to be the first of its kind. And so when you use tools that have no precedent, especially when you're dealing with majority of riders who may be, men of color, these type of tools can do more harm than good. And that won't be found out till on the back end. And I have another question for you, Chief. What type of resources are going to be employed to staff this type of program?
And I don't know yet, because we've got to figure out who's going to manage it. We got to figure out what it's going to look like in terms of how the rewards are going to be. If we get them, what's the criteria for receiving the reward money? And so I haven't assembled a team to even address that piece of it yet. But it would have to be managed by somebody within the police department, though.
Okay. And the tips are going to be coming in are going to be anonymous, right?
It's not stated from what I've seen in the proposal, but the way I envision it is that it would mirror what we have with Crime Stoppers, and those tips are anonymous. So I would think that if it's implemented, it would be anonymous tips.
Okay, so the police officers could potentially be chasing erroneous leads. If, somebody calls in and says they see a bike that has that potential. And with the police force in our city now already not staffed to capacity, this can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Detrimental in the sense that we're employing resources towards this, but maybe we can employ resources to things that are more pressing needs of the city. I think that's one of my concerns as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to open it up to the public. We have one speaker, Alana Klein. Thank you, Councilman Holmes.
First off, Chief, I appreciate you being here. I wasn't too familiar with the last police chief, but you seem very active in the community and trying to solve the problems that we have, so I really appreciate that.
I'm sorry to stop you. If you could give us your name, your address for the record.
Okay. Alana Klein, 29 Glenwood, 12208, not 12203.
Thank you.
I'd also like to recognize Councilmember Robinson. We had a lunch meeting a couple weeks ago, so I appreciate you reaching out to me, especially because I'm not your constituent. Mr. Hoey, we briefly discussed this over email. Again, I'm not your constituent, but I appreciate everyone's time. I think you guys have all hit on most of my concerns with this legislation. First off, I don't believe a rewards program, a monetary rewards program, is the correct way to go about this. Even if it is just one part of a possible solution. I just fear people falsely calling the police or calling the police on legal ATV use or something like that. And as Councilmember Robinson said, we're already stretched pretty thin with the force as it is. Another issue I have, which a couple members brought up, including Mr. Johnson, was if ATV use or dirt bike use is redirected to a safe space, it's completely benign activity. And so I think that if we're going to quote-unquote throw money at the problem, we should create safe spaces or try to redirect the activity. And that might mean telling people about areas in Colony or Guilderland because they have more park space and more green space than we do here in Albany. And Another concern I have is that people out towards the quote-unquote upper wards
Thank you.
have this kind of space. Mr. Hoey, I believe you said you have like 2 acres or something like that?
My house, but there's no park.
No,
And this is meant to just be public comment and not Q&A.
okay. Well, just all that to say, if someone has that much space and they have an ATV, they can use it on their own property. But people that live in downtown, like around this area, they almost essentially have no space other than to ride on the streets. And some people are, doing it just for the thrill. But my other issue is, even if we create a safe space or let people know about a safe space, not everyone has a tow truck or a trailer. So how are they going to get their ATV or their dirt bike to that area? They essentially have to do it on the street. So I would just, in conclusion, caution that if you see someone on a ATV or dirt bike that's just at a red light stopped, that's obviously someone who's trying to do the right thing and get to a safe space area. But if someone's cruising down the wrong side of the street going the wrong way, that's obviously a different situation. So I appreciate you giving me time for comments, and I look forward to seeing how the vote goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Holly Morris.
Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you for being here. You can give us your name and your address, and we allow between 3 and 5 minutes for public comment.
Okay, my name is Holly Maurer. I live at 148 Quail, right here in Albany, near the corner of Washington. Yeah, okay. I wanted to say that I've had a camera mounted, but I've lived in the same place for like 13 to 15 years. And way back then, we've had a problem with ATVs, 4-wheelers, 3-wheelers, even regular unlicensed mini bikes, even bikes that have been turned into illegal bikes. We've had families come and go that lived in our neighborhood that nearly riding down on the sidewalk, children almost getting clipped. We've had a lot of senior citizens, the bikes popping wheelies like they're driving in England. They're driving on the wrong side of the street, circling buses. It's terrible. And I personally wish that more hard-handedness would be getting involved. It's very dangerous. The rewards program is a nice idea, but a lot of people probably won't call up because they don't want to, it's like, they're like a gang, they're like a bicycle gang. If they find out that you've called and ratted out on them, you're going to get a lot of people chasing your family down. I've had the luxury, I come from a family that do partake in bike racing, but you have to register them, you have to, have insurance for them. And I really doubt that these people are having, they're legal. I have overheard many people saying, I'd love to tell who they are, but I'm afraid that they're going to chase me or my family. Okay? I don't know. And I have neighbors that actually have legal bikes. They have licenses on them. They're registered. They have the literature, and they never take them out. They take them and they put them on their vehicle, and they probably go drive someplace safe, But this, what I wanted to say is my area is really bad. I don't know how many people phone up around my area. We've had, just on the way here, okay, you said I only have 5 minutes. Just on the way here, there were 6 illegal activities. When I left my house, got on the bus, came down, and I actually believe that some of the officers probably were responding to some of them, popping wheelies on the wrong way down the street, driving in front of the buses.
This is 149?
Yeah. One for you. But there was one down Benson doing circles. I don't know if he was just a motorcycle. There was something else I really wanted to say. Oh dear. I don't think I'm going to have enough time.
You don't have time.
Take your time. Take your time.
I can't remember. There was something else I really wanted to say, but if I, oh well.
And if you think of it, you can always email remarks after tonight to Michelle, and we all get the remarks. So don't feel that you, it's a missed opportunity, because you can still get your comments to us as council members, because this has to be considered amongst the full council.
Well, I did think of something else, but it's not what I wanted to say. Is there any way, I see people take snapshots. Do you have anything initiated where people can just send in their pics right at that moment that they catch the people on the bikes? You could have a log. You know, you could create a log of proof that those bikes was there at that time, popping those wheelies at that time. And then when people do phone in the tips on where the bikes are hidden, you have that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you could create, you know, where people can camera phone, you know, text pictures in?
Maybe
There's
on the
nothing
street
like
lights with the
that.
camera.
That's a good suggestion that I'm sure the chief can take note of.
I'll talk to you about it, because we do. We take those types of tips right now.
Yeah.
And maybe we just need to publicize it a little bit more about where they can send them, but we do take those.
Because the only other way to do it, as I know, is to, you know, you have to download it and then email it. And by that time, people get busy and they forget, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it just, so you know, the P3 app that's associated with Crime Stoppers allows you to do that.
Texting?
Texting,
Just send
yeah.
the picture,
And it's
just snap
completely-
and text
well,
it right
you have
away?
to take the picture, but you have to open up the P3 app, it's anonymous, and send it that way. For Crime Stoppers, not only is the reporting anonymous, but the payout's anonymous also. So a handful of people that know make decisions on payments, and it goes to local banks like a SFQ or whatever, and you go in with a number, hand the teller a piece of paper with the number on it, and they give you the money. So it's completely anonymous.
Oh, I didn't, you know, a lot of
So I just
people-
want to, just to
Sorry.
be mindful and respectful of the other members of the public who spoke previously. It's not meant to be a Q&A. So if you have any additional comments, we'll take them at this time. If not, thank you for coming, and thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Thank you for that, yes.
I'm your representative.
Oh, hello.
So for
You
the
need anything? My cell
committee
phone's on there.
members,
Okay.
Okay.
I am going to take a vote on this legislation introduced by Councilman Conti. So I'll take a motion from the floor.
I move that we approve the legislation as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. So the motion is on the floor that we vote on approving the legislation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes out of committee with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to conclude the meeting, but Councilman Anani, you're more than happy.
No, we got the $1 million.